So it's a beautiful sunny day. Unfortunately, well, depends how you look at it. Fortunately, after a whole lot of rain, that fills the aquifers. But unfortunately, it has washed out a number of people, their crops, their livelihoods, downtowns, and this is the second year in a row. So, here's what I know. In my 30 years here, the only time these quote flash floods have happened isn't because they're flashes out of nowhere. The same storms have been here every 30 years, every single year. The same lightning and thunder coming across. The torrents of rain has been the same. The amount of volumes of storms has been the same. Maybe, arguably, some years worse than others, some years less than others, but there's no real difference other than when you look at what happens uphill. So basically, what goes on up there is literally trees right now. And every single location in this community where those upper elevations get cut and developed, you have surface runoff and you lose tree uptake of nutrients, but also of just the water volume. So there's many ways to engineer solutions to stop that or to handle that. And unfortunately, it costs money and it makes it prohibitive. So the same people that are zoning things aren't necessarily mandating the things necessary to make it sustainable, and then we all have to pay for that. But at the same point, there's just so many other components of the planning process that are being driven by both Democrats, Republicans. The party doesn't matter. The politics of it doesn't matter. It's the sort of the neoliberal, neoconservative sense of progress at all costs that will use gaslighting and greenwashing to justify how it makes things either socially responsibly, out of thin air, it's better than the other thing, or whatever it is, but it never actually works out the way they sell it, the greenwash. And it's conservatives too, They're like, oh, big business, here, look, great thing. And then it's like, but look at all that environmental pollution that it came with. And we didn't really calculate that into their sort of tax deductions. Oops, who's going to pay for it? All of us. So I don't know. Anyway, I look at it and I'm just really upset that the same people that talk platitudes about politics don't actually see it for what it is, and instead want to use the crisis of the moment to constantly leverage more funds for the reasons that they obviously want to recover. Everybody does. But when we're now doing this on a perpetual basis, there's only so much the insurance is going to cover. There's only so much our taxes can cover before we all start losing money for making bad decisions. And I can't, in good conscience say that I'm, living here 3 decades and seeing exactly why when you cut all those trees, you pick up the force of water. The force of it is in its own right. It picks up momentum. And the steeper the slopes, the more it picks up speed, the more it erodes, the more it's going to create these, quote, flash floodings. It's just because there's no system along the way to uptake the water in storage. It's not rocket science. But the reality is that, yes, we have a planet that rotates on an axial precession, the precession of the ecliptic. And in that process, our North Star shifts across 28,000 years. And we're currently closer to Polaris as the North Star. Previous waves of archaeoastronomers here had Thuban in the constellation of Draco as their North Star. These are all things an astronomy-based culture would understand and know and be able to use for cartographic purposes and all of that. But the also reality of what we're discovering here in the archaeology is exactly how the water engineering up in the Hunger Ravines would have literally come from the ancients, our kinship here, people that were caretakers before me here in the meadow. They would have been up there, and they would have been crisscrossing the ravines with stone walls and building cisterns and essentially creating cavities of water retention. And for that reason, it cascades all the way down through the ravines. And as it gets down all the way to the meadow adjacent to us and out to this meadow, it compresses into these meadows in ways that then forces water specifically into points where you get extremely high volume wells. And as I was pointing out in another video, just on the south of here, each wellhead gets about 600 and, I think it's like 640, 680 gallons per, what is it, GPI? No, what is it, the gallons per square inch? No, the GPS? I forget. Gallons per second, I think is what it is. Or GPM maybe, gallons per minute. I think that's how wellheads are measured. So if you're thinking about the normal wellhead at like say 5 to 10 gallons per minute GPM, then think about one at 640 gallons per minute, or even 3 at that level, which is what's happening over there. And that all gets extracted out, and for the benefit of the downtown, which right now is partially below water. But the other part of it is understanding how these ravines were engineered for water. Also plays into understanding how this entire stretch of meadows along here has water distribution all the way across. It's evidenced in LiDAR. And then when you get to the 2 mounds here at the astronomy site, you have effectively on both mounds equal distribution from the peak or the fulcrum of the mound itself in both directions. And then evidenced in stonework on the sides of, well, what is the Waterworks Road here, basically the Ouroboros design, where you have on the east slope 2 tails almost receiving what would be on the west slope the head of the Ouroboros. And that occurs here on the southern mound, and then it occurs on the northern mound as well as you drop down into the waterworks itself, and the gates there to the ancient headwaters up that way. So with all that said, it's a beautiful day. I guess I'm gonna leave it there, and then yeah. And then on top of it, if I decide to use a separate thing, I might just kind of share this. When it comes to the kinship, I want to make sure that people understand that, I'm not trying to pattern our religious existence, our pious organization, on any Judeo-Christian construct or monotheistic, including, say, Islam. I mean, it's not really any of our mission to exclude anyone here. But as a born-again pagan, it's not my responsibility to adhere to those faiths and cultures and their doctrine. I can try to be respectful, and I always am. But what I can't do is pretend that I look at the earth as a born-again pagan, and I understand logically how things function, how the alignments of the solstices matter. Even though we live in a culture that's diminished the importance of the solstice, the equinox, there are spiritual people that believe, whether it's a neo-paganism or whatever label they want to use, there's a spiritual thing that they bring to it. That's fine. Scientifically, myself and the deacons that I know are more interested in the forensics. It doesn't mean my faith isn't real. It doesn't mean that what I believe and see and vision and then find in evidence isn't real. But it doesn't pretend that every single deacon in our organization believes exactly as I do. And towards that end, I want to be very clear. I don't expect or mandate any member to just buy in wholeheartedly to things that they don't necessarily see and hear and feel. What I do have to kind of like project and make sure people understand is that we're not a faith-based organization in the sense that everybody is going to be super kind, warm, fuzzy, and going to make you feel good. The truth, seeking truth isn't necessarily to us where the same emotional support other churches might give to their congregation is not going to be the same here. And I need to be 100% clear of that, because I don't want to bring the emotional and the belief structures of other faiths into our clerics, or the clergy rather. I don't want to be preaching something that is based on forgiveness, when ultimately we know this cycle of earth, with all of the glacial realities, with all of the acts of precession as we rotate a 41,000 year cycle that we have evidence of here across this astronomy site. I just personally can't get to that place where I believe Earth is forgiving and compassionate to humans. And I think the thing, if you want to find compassion and loving and forgiving in the kinship, I want you to think about it this way. The Earth isn't inherently going to deliver that to you. You've got to figure out where that exists. So for me, it exists in the space where I look at what the ancients here have shared with me, and they've shared rockworks, stoneworks, beautiful, beautiful stoneworks that I've invited many very big thinkers to do the research and the science that I have, the mathematical modeling to apply all the astronomy and all of the mathematical applications of what ancient Greeks were given credit, that I can basically show you how those things would have come into a real world existence in a working model, kind of like going to an old time, Tunbridge Fair here in Vermont. Like, we can reconstruct these things because it's literally isosceles triangles and equilateral triangles carved everywhere in ways Earth doesn't do naturally. So there's a lot of pieces all here that we can replicate. That I can get behind because it's demonstrable, it's science, it's relevant because the forensics of it are real. And I'm not trying to project into it and say anything about it other than, if you look at that and then don't see a compassionate and loving humanity that tried to remind us here in the future, what they saw is about to obliterate all of the universe that we now know as Earth because of the flooding to come. And there's no aliens, there's no spaceships that took some people away and then humans, being the monkeys that we are, found ways to dig into crevices and find high ground and do whatever we had to do to survive, to geothermal cool and heat. That's not like rocket science. But at a certain point, we project the idea that they were like, ugh, fire, sitting there like freezing, not like comfortably, that's the, if there's a bit of a critical default in our thinking and our logic, it's in our modern education system to think that those that were living not just hundreds and centuries ago, but like millennia ago, dozens of millennia ago, like the brains somehow or another weren't as developed as all of our other organs, all of our other anatomy, all of our other developments as hominids, to think that the brain didn't develop on par with a level of thinking that was predating Grecian and, Greco-Roman sort of innovations of all these great ideas that we give Ptolemy and all these, Pythagoras, all these credits. They were probably great teachers that figured this stuff out. Maybe all of this was obliterated and it made its way there in the sort of Bronze Age. I'm not going to project into that. What I am going to say is that my belief structure, what I preach here at the Kinship, is that in the stoneworks, there is tangible proof that somebody was trying to tell us this is connected to that, it's connected to that, and here is your frickin', early latitude and longitude system on an atlas baked in 3D in rockworks that celebrate all of these pyramids and stoneworks, and in ways that I've already talked about over and over again. So that for me is what I can talk to. That's what I can speak to because I've done the archaeology, I've done the research, I've plotted all of these sites on Google Earth. I've seen other people try to replicate some of the theories that I've been proposing, but they kind of push it into their location of focus and the thing that they are passionate about. It's not a plug and play kind of steal the idea and swap it into a different location. You can't, it's a binary equation. You can either look at my research and say on or off, because the GPS locations all match up in ways that I've made the case about. And I'm only laughing and finding it humorous because it's so precise that I've taken weeks of binges into mapping and cartography in order to lay out the ley lines that then demonstrably show how all of these peaks here in the Green Mountains and all these peaks up here in the Worcester Mountains equate to points of radians, to demark literally an atlas, right? And so you do that here, you do that down in Peru, which is exactly due south of us here, and you have effectively a very tight grid system as I've proposed and mapped and developed, well, not developed, but remapped maybe into Google Earth. So it's really kind of unique and surreal, but it's mind-numbing because a lot of people think it's so far advanced that like it just can't be true. And it is so far advanced, but it was not because humans didn't have the capability to be compassionate, to be kind. Like, we're force-fed shit about how, like, pagans sacrificed into the volcano the virgin for the feast of eat the fucking hearts out of the fucking humans. And it never was that way until it got bastardized that way. And then things got probably rotated around, and later cultures were trying to make sure that they were pushing back other cultures and tribalism and all the fucking shit. But the reality that we can't, as humans, have come to huge levels of logic and knowledge base and intellectual property before all these other colonials claim credit. It's not for me to say that, like, I want to take credit away from, Newton for his, ideas that led to the development of the sextant. But, like, if you can't look at the mountains here and the ones in Peru and do all the work that I've done to showcase how, in fact, that creates exactly a megalithic version of the sextant in two locations, giving you the ability to map the precision of which you would have a latitude and longitude system across the Americas, specifically using pyramids in Central America, Mexico, all the petroglyphs, all the cliff dwellings, all of the canyons of the Southwest, and then all of the Northwest sites of petroglyph and pictographs and petroglyphs in the Northwest and up in Canada and all throughout, the effigy mounds in the Ohios. I mean, I've just mapped so many of these at this point that literally it creates a perfect degrees of separation among these latitude and longitude lines when intersecting between these 2 points. And it's only because you have a constant along a magnetic north to south line. So that's a short bit of the whole logic behind it, but I also wanted to connect with the idea that the compassion isn't something that we just want to reach out to and say, let's be loving and kind, and that's what our church is about. I'm not going to prove myself in that way and then be guarded in how I say things because people don't want me to be offensive. I've never not been offensive to some, but am always consistent in my integrity of saying what is true to me. And I believe that is why our deacons and our membership look to me to provide guidance and leadership, and then also correct me when they think I'm wrong. And I do listen to them and our board of directors and our trustees and all the people that want to create a sense of safety net that some look to try to impress upon me and tell me, just so, do it this way. I'm not going to ever be that person, and I don't want people thinking that they could stunt at me to try to get me to be something different than what I am. Fear doesn't work, right? Desire doesn't work. I don't need more than what I have. I'm good. But by the same token, I expect more of others. And that's our government, that's our leaders, but that's also my relationships with everybody and my family inclusive. Because if we're not doing more for each other and expecting more of each other, we're literally allowing shit to happen, like genocide. And so if there's a unifying thing among all of our people, is that literally the forensics of this matters, because that's truth. We're chasing truth. We're not chasing a version of truth that supports a lot of people's way of looking at it. So we all get together on a Sunday or a Friday or a Saturday, whatever the fuck it is, and then feel good about us being community, but we're lying about all of it, right? Because that's part of being true, is not lying, is being honest. What is the fucking world about? that's what we do. So if you have problems with that, then I guess we got problems. But, I just want to make sure that people understand it's not that I'm inherently not compassionate, or that our kinship isn't compassionate in the sense that, oh, we're Viking pagans. Well, that's maybe a group of people that were part of this long ago, and I could definitely document in the artifacts and the stoneworks the wave upon which they would have been here in the 800s and 900s. And that maps to the actual science of the astronomy and the sequence of the acts of precession, 41,000 years. It's a calibration of which you can't really get wrong once you lock it in. Again, it's binary. Either I'm right or I'm wrong, but I know I've done enough research at this point and did all the work that can be proofed upon multiple proofs that this is what I say it is. So to that end, it's not a con, it's not a marketing ploy, it's not some big pitch for a fundraising appeal for a nonprofit that, while we are, the goal of which isn't to exist to make money, it's to restore these things. It's to bring the knowledge back about what this is. If it's not inherently to create peace and kindness and well wishes for everybody to feel fuzzy, that's for other people to do. I don't do that. I mean, I think it's beautiful and I love that, but I'm not going to be the person that's going to be some other religion because somebody wants to be attached to this. And I can't tell you how many times that's already come up. And so it got to the point where I was even preemptive with that with someone, and it kind of came across wrong. So I don't really want to hurt anybody, but I can't really expand the thing that we're doing beyond what we can, forensically prove. I can't expand the mission of what we're doing until we're fiscally solvent as a nonprofit, and we're getting there. But these are the pieces I just want to be very clear about, so that, I'm sweating up here, I'm walking on the roof deck, pacing back and forth, but having a wonderful, beautiful day, and having some great conversations with some beautiful people. So in those conversations, it's also having the wherewithal and the insight to know that when I hear the advice from our deacons and from those that I trust and consult with, I listen to them really, really intensely, and want to course correct where I need to. So I think that was kind of the gist of this, and hope everyone's well. Peace.